Hello, everyone. I'm Cyrus Webb.
And I'm Manswell Peterson.
And we welcome you to the Author's Den. This is the place where authors come to share their writing journey and encourage others.
And we have some fun along the way, too.
That's right. Glad you're here. Sit back and enjoy this episode of the Author's Den. And hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Author's Den. I'm Cyrus Webb. Here in just a moment, I'll be joined by my co-host, Manswell Peterson. Have a very special guest that's joining us for today. We're going to be talking to, you guys know her here on IG as Trisha J. We're going to be talking to Pat about her writing journey and also her book. Have it here on my Kindle here. You guys see Uncrippled. We'll talk to her about the book, but also what it's been like for her as a storyteller to be able to share the stories of others. Her in and Manswell. Jacqueline, hello to you. Good to be able to see you. Ricardo, hello to you. Good to be able to see you. Manswell. And there's Pat. How's everybody?
Great.
Melissa Banks, good to be able to see you as well. But as I mentioned, Pat, they know you here, of course, on IG as Trisha J. We have you tagged in the post, so we definitely want our audience to make sure you guys are being able to connect with her. Excited about being able to have you on with us, Pat, today. I'm going to kick things off, though, by throwing it over to my co-host, Manswell.
Hey, welcome everybody. Welcome to the Author's Den. Welcome, Miss Patricia. How you doing today?
I'm doing great.
Good. Let's jump right into this because, wow, this book, Uncrippled. I read this book, and I know Cyrus has read it, and we were just blown away at what information was there. And I remember talking to my wife about this and a couple of people, and I'm like, this book should be in every single school, every single teacher, admin, counselor, superintendent, school board member. What was your inspiration for this book?
Well, my inspiration was a combination of my education and my teaching experience. There are some things that as a child who lived through trauma, things that happened to me, and then some things that I inadvertently did to students when I was teaching. And that was the basis of this book.
Okay, because I remember when I was going through this book, and I remember, reading about the encounter with the student who was there doodling and dealing with trauma. And I remember the trauma I had. And that's why literally this book should have been out when I was in school, because that's how many years it goes back. So imagine how many students actually slipped through the crack because information like this wasn't there. And we need this kind of information because it comes from someone working in that field. But also as a kid that dealt with trauma growing up, I was really, messed up. So now that you got this book out there, it should be received by everybody. Are you finding pushback because you're really laying it out there for them, or is it being well received by people?
Well, it's being well received by some people, but I would really like to get it into the hands of new teachers. And I think the premise or some of the backlash that I have gotten about the book is people mistakenly think that I'm blaming teachers, right, or that I'm giving students a free pass for misbehavior. And that's not it at all. I'm right, just trying to offer some advice for things that you would never think of that might trigger a trauma in a student. For right, example, okay, one exercise that I used to give a lot was the family tree. I'm in the genealogy. I love family tree. But I found that there are some students who they don't know their dad, they don't know their family, and when they're filling in those blanks, that can really trigger a trauma response. No fault of the teacher, because right, it actually is a good lesson, but for some students, it is a trigger mechanism.
Wow. That's deep, because in the book you talk about a student that actually had to deal with rejection from his dad, and I dealt with that as well. And that's why I say this book hit me on so many different levels. How do you find yourself now helping students with the material that you have that you can present to people, because it's so needed? It's just an amazing book.
I try to make sure that I get to know students. I get to know something about them. I get to know what they like, what they enjoy. and I try to provide them with ways that they can connect to exercises, assignments, academics in a way that they can connect to it. Because just presenting academics to every student in the same way is how we get to a point where we rely on standardized tests to tell us what a student's academic ability is, and that is far, far from the truth.
Right, because I get a good example about that. Again, reading through the book, I remember, if you're old school, you remember this. They had the California Achievement
I'm
Test.
old school.
Look, and see,
yes.
I aced that test, but I was bored in the classroom. And so it caused behavior problems because the work they would give me at that level, I would zip through it. And so I'm sitting there, doodling, whatever else. And I wound up getting into trouble a lot because of that. And I just felt that, they didn't either they didn't care, they didn't understand. And it was like there was nobody to talk to. And so, you covered that in the book about, teachers actually getting to know the student and taking the time, because that's the very, 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 most important thing for me that I got from the book. Take the time to get to know the student, because you don't know what that trauma that student is dealing with, and that's causing problems, especially.
Right. And it causes them to act out, because two things interrupt academics more than anything. One of them is hunger, and the other is shame.
Right.
Children will go a long way. They will cut up to avoid shame.
Right.
And I can just, remember, I taught special education for a lot of years. And back when I was teaching special education, all the special education students were in one room. And
right.
If you were in high school, you stayed in that one room all day long with the same teacher. You might have gotten an opportunity to go out to PE or something. And we would let our students out. They would typically eat lunch before everybody else.
Right.
But they would make a mad dash trying to get back into the classroom before the other students came into the hall, because that was a shameful experience for them. Or riding on the short bus. That was a shameful experience. And we are not born with shame.
Right.
Shame is pushed upon us. So we have to find ways to not shame students.
Right.
And like I say, no fault of the teacher, but a lot of times we shame students. We give assignments that they can't afford to participate in. And all those types of things, they're just shameful. And that is one way of triggering trauma.
Right. We're going to cover some more of that. I know Cyrus got a bunch of comments he got to try to read. So, Cyrus, go ahead and hit your part, man.
Yeah,
go ahead and do your thing, man.
So, Pat, I just want to first of all say to Manswell and you, just to let you guys know, if you guys see some flickering, we have a tornado watch here. It's nothing supernatural. It's just that if the lights are flickering, I live in the country, it's just one of those things. I just want to let you guys know that. But I do want to welcome everyone who's joining us for this episode of The Author's Den. Appreciate all the comments. Dr. Pretty, which is, of course, Mrs. Peterson, says the book is very good. And also, I think
Yeah.
said, developing relationships with students is key. I totally agree with that. Pat, I'm glad to have you on with us, and I have to say I come from a different perspective than Manswell. Manswell, of course, having been an educator, I'm someone, I work with the schools here in my home state of Mississippi, so I get to go in and spend time with the students and teachers. But you start off the book by saying this is a project that was 2 decades in the making for you. And then, of course, the pandemic happened and everything. Why was this something you felt was necessary for you to complete?
My mother was a writer, and I have books and books here that she wrote. She never got a chance to publish, and I've always been a great writer. My teacher told me in the first grade, "You're smart and you're a great writer." I believed her, and so I honed those skills, and I became what I believe is a great writer. And I have a lot of stories in me that I want to get out. But I ran across a young lady, and she's from my hometown, but I didn't know her. Her name is Mia Pittman. She is a mentor of mine, the real trendsetter. And I took a class from her so I could kind of get a kickstart about writing my book, how to get started. And one thing she said to me was, write what you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I have been in education 30 years. I know education. I know students. I know relationships. And that is, it came to me, you know. I say a lot that in these times, education is really crippled, and it's crippled by bureaucracy and standardization. And a lot of times we move away from connection and relationship. Students, they don't even have recess. They are not allowed to talk at the lunch table. Where they do that at? You know, that's where we spend most of our time. If you're on a job, you're so happy for lunch break, so you can talk with other people. So I think a lot of times we stifle that out of students. But to go back, that was my motivation for finishing this book. And the pandemic actually drove me harder.
Yeah. Now, the title of the book, as I mentioned in the beginning, is Uncrippled, but you have an acronym that you use in the book for crippled.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about the second P that you use, and that is an interesting way that you approach that, and that is procrastination. And what I thought was so interesting is when I was reading that chapter, I thought, I can see how with teachers, with all they have to do, how it's very easy to say, that may be something I need to address down the line, or I see something, may see a student going through a fluctuation or a change. That's something maybe I need to get to. But then everyone's so busy. But even those outside of education, of course, we do the same thing. What was it like for you to address that, Pat, about the importance of not procrastinating when we see things and doing what we need to do at that point to bring attention to it?
Oh yeah, I was kind of glad to be able to start the book off with procrastination, because I'm a procrastinator by nature. I have to fight against it. I have to fight so hard against it. And one thing that just got my attention was I put off something that I should have addressed with a student. And I took another route by going directly to the teacher. You know, I made the student wait. I was an administrator. I've been an administrator, classroom teacher, all of that. And the teacher and the student, they were having a confrontation. And I told the student, listen, I'm going to let you cool off, and we'll talk about it tomorrow.
Right.
And I went and I talked with the teacher about what was going on. Well, tomorrow, the student didn't come to school. And the next day, he didn't come to school. And the next day, he didn't come to school. And I tried my best to get him back in school. I visited his home. When I visited his home, I found out that he was living on his own and that he had 2 jobs. And, you know, and that will haunt me forever. Because if I had gone the other route and talked with him, this is what I believe. If I had spoken with him and made the teacher wait, then I might have been able to save him, to get him where he needed to be. And so when I say to teachers, I'm not faulting any teachers. I'm just saying decisions that we make in the heat of the moment. I've looked back many times and found out that that was not the right decision to make. And if I can just kind of mention it to beginning teachers, it might be something that will help them when they get into that type of situation, when they want to know how to proceed.
Yeah.
Right.
That reminds me also, Pat, of what you wrote under the L, under limitation. Hey, Felicia. And because you also talk about that basically things that aren't addressed at one stage end up becoming worse at another. And you even said in the book, traumatized children become discarded at young ages, especially Black males. This would account for the high numbers of Black males in special education classes. So that correlation, is that something that has been part of the conversation you're now having around this book?
It is. It is. Everywhere I go. Because right now, my current position, I direct. I'm the regional director for 2 schools for students who have on the verge of dropping out.
Right.
And these students, when I have these conversations with them, getting to know them and trying to understand, you know, what is it about school, you know, that, you know, you find that you 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 just can't grasp a hold of, because you're very bright. And the students will say, well, nobody ever told me that, one parent, I love this lady. We called her out to the school, and she said, she came out there, she was already a huff and a puff, and we were told her how well her son was progressing. She said, I have never been called to a school and given good news.
Right.
She said, every time I've been called to school, it's been something wrong. And I see that will put limitations on a parent.
Yeah.
And limitations cause low expectations. So if the parent is already going there expecting to have to deal with some type of negativity, then that, on top of how I'm going to pay the bills, how I'm going to keep the lights on, how I'm going to do this, whatever, we have if we procrastinate and put limitations on the same child,
right,
we push that child out the door.
Yeah.
And we push it straight into the prison pipeline.
Right.
Yeah, really powerful. Manswell, I'm going to turn it over to you for your final thoughts.
Okay. Now, I got something I got to say about that part, because literally what you just talked about, Patricia, was, how you remember something that happened. And I remember, when I was in high school, it was my junior year, and most people didn't know what I was dealing with. The mom that was hooked on, drugs. And so my shoes were so bad, I had to cut silhouettes out of cardboard to put in my shoes. And of course, it rained. And when it rains and you can't wash clothes because you can't get detergent, this teacher, she shamed me in front of everybody. And literally, I think 20 years after high school was over, I finally bumped into her again, and she apologized. She says, I never saw you, in that light again, because I made the mistake. I was having a bad day. That one moment. And so that's why I love the fact that you want the young teachers to get this. That one moment can make a child go left or right. And so I'm going to tell you now that this book will be taken with me on my I Got Now tour. I'm going to be dropping off copies of this book with all of the schools. I'm going to encourage all the administrators not only to read it themselves, especially get it to the students who are student teaching, the teachers who are in the classrooms now, because we cannot have this mistake happen. And that book is so vital to everything that's going on, because a lot of students are misdiagnosed with ADHD because the teacher loses focus or, doesn't see the trauma. And so we have to make sure that they see the trauma so that they can actually help and assist that child, because we can be a lot more successful. That's why I love this book so much. And I'm going to be screaming about it from the top of my lungs to the top of the mountains everywhere I go. I appreciate you writing the book. It is so needed. Thank you. And I'm going to turn back over to Cyrus.
And thank you. I have to say that teachers have so much on their plate.
Right.
Administrators have so much on their plates. And so it is so easy to miss it. But if it's at the front of your mind, you might not miss it.
Right. And that's why the book is important. That's why I'm going to take it to every school I visit on this tour, because we could help so many students. And it's like, again, we get them before that mistake happens, because a lot of times they do have a lot of stuff. They have a lot of stuff going on. And I know a lot of teachers actually do work well into the hours when they get home. This can actually just really, 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 really help. And I just think this book is needed, not just here in Georgia and Mississippi. I think it's needed across the country. And so I'm going to do my best to make sure that we get that book into every single teacher's hand that we can get it to.
I just want to make sure Felicia had asked. Felicia, it's Uncrippled by Patricia L. Jackson. I just want to make sure you can see it there. And Patricia, she's asking where you're located.
I didn't hear the last thing you said.
Yeah, she's asking where you're located.
I'm in Albany, Georgia. Okay. Yes.
Okay. All right. So last thing we want to ask you, Pat, and again, we appreciate you stopping by the Authors Den. What advice would you have for authors? As I mentioned at the beginning of the book, you talk about this is something that took you a while to write, but you got it done. What advice would you give to authors, even if they feel stuck on a project they started?
I keep a notepad beside my bed, in my purse, everywhere. because a lot of my good stuff comes to me at night. Shout out Mia again. She told me to keep that notepad. When it comes to you, write it down. It doesn't matter if it's not unorganized, whatever it's looking like, just write it down. Write the thought down. And then you can go back and fix it later. And also invest in yourself. If there are classes, there are workshops, you have to invest in yourself, because I can promise you, you're not good as you think you are.
Love that. Love that. Pat, really do appreciate you writing the book. I'll make sure that we get our review done for you. How can our viewers stay connected with you?
Oh, I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. You can find me at Trisha J on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram. I'm the Savvy Corporate. You can find me at Savvy Solutions. I'm all over there, but look for Trisha J on Facebook.
Okay. And Manswell, always a pleasure. How can they stay connected with you?
Hey, they can find me on all social media, Manswell T. Peterson. Email me, inbox me, and I'll email and inbox you back.
And we definitely thank you all for watching this episode of The Author's Den, also for listening on Max WYAD 94.1 FM. And